It is 10:37 at the Big 550 KTRS. Everybody's working for a living, but so many people have found that their ideas about working for a living has really changed, and that so many people have adapted to work from home, that type of setup, and returning to work is not something that companies are having an easy time with. Cindy Waller is one of our favorite guests. She is an executive coach who is recognized for enhancing communication skills, leadership style, and mentoring capabilities to increase the bench strength of any organization. Her website, cindywaller.com. That's Cindy, WAHLER.com. Welcome back, Dr. Cindy. How are you today?
I'm excellent, and thank you so much for having me back. It's a privilege.
Are you surprised by these trends that the people who have been successfully working from home, it's not that they're really resistant to going back, they just don't see any reason when it's not a blanket situation, correct?
Correct. I'm not surprised at all. However, organizations seem to be perplexed. If we step back and think about employees in the last 3 years, two things have occurred around their ask. One is that they've proven that they are not just as productive, that they're more productive, and they're asking employers now for trust that I am committed, invested, and even though boundaries have blurred around work and home life, we've been able to demonstrate our productivity, the quality of our work. So that's one. And they're also looking for their employers to show greater empathy. So what is it that I need as an employee to show that you care about me, you recognize that I have challenges at home, whether it's daycare, childcare, elder care, single parent, and a whole myriad of other concerns.
I read an article that most Americans still go to the office, but that the people who are working remotely want to continue. And I mean, the commute itself for people who have a long commute would be one good reason to stay at home. Do you agree with that, Cindy?
Very good reason in terms of extending the workday to which they have the hour that they, or the 2 hours, whatever their commute is that they gained back during the pandemic. Also the cost of commuting. For some, their commuting schedules have changed. Trains are not available when they were before. And also the cost of even purchasing lunch versus having your meal at home. And so if I look at my clients, many of them who have returned, even if it is in a hybrid model, will explain that at the end of the day, only a certain percentage are in the office and they're doing Zoom or WebEx or Teams calls and they're on their computer. So it doesn't really make sense, that they can't understand the reason for being in the office. Or one client I had actually in a 40-floor building, she was the only person on the floor that day. And she said to me, it actually was a bit unsettling because I was the only person there. Should something happen to me, would anybody know? And so I think to defend the organizations, they need time to be able to calibrate and recalibrate what return to work really means. And so most organizations are suggesting 2 to 3 days. And what's happening is that really what managers should do is have individual conversations with their employees and their team and find out what's best. So when an organization argues that it's important for you to be in the office because you need to feed off people's energy, we need it for collaboration, it really depends on the type of work that you do as well.
Cindy, we were talking earlier this hour about what's going on with the airline industry and how they are having work shortages or employee shortages at peak vacation times. Are you seeing other sectors, other financial sectors, being as impacted? Maybe they're just off the radar because this isn't their peak time in the limelight.
Absolutely. I think every sector has been touched by this, and we do know that 20% of the workforce has now turned over, and so when we've talked for years and years about the war on talent, actually employees have won the war. And so that means it's a buyer's market. employees have leverage. And, the first rule of thumb is to talk to your manager about what it is that you need so that hopefully that can be accommodated. But absolutely, it's in every sector that employees now are revisiting what's important to them, how they want to work, when they want to work, and where they want to work.
Dr. Waller, I know none of us know the answer to this, but here in St. Louis, we have a lot of office space. Much of it is going unused now, and I just have often wondered what will happen to all that office space in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, for one thing, there's a shortage of housing and affordable housing. And if we get to the point where people are just not returning to the office, I can see offices downsizing. And then what? What to do with? We need some creative person to come up with something.
You're right. I too don't have the answer, but it is a question that's being asked because the square footage is no longer necessary. And they are talking about repurposing it, whether it be, as you suggest, through housing, condominiums, apartment rentals, and that it's a mixed building, whether it is both residential and commercial use.
What would you tell young people who have just graduated from college or a VOTEC academy, Dr. Waller, in terms of the way to play the job market at this moment?
Great question. I love this question. So if I was a young person or a young person was coming to me around advice and around their career, first off, I do think that some presence in the office is important. And here's why. When it comes to bonus time, your yearly annual raise, performance evaluation, that it is human nature that the manager or the person evaluating you is going to somehow be more positive to that individual, that employee who they've had an in-person meetings with versus somebody who's totally remote. And so I would recommend that if you're starting your career, that you are in the office some of the time, whether it's for your one-on-one meetings, whether it's your team meetings, whatever it might be, in addition to negotiating that remote work. And I also think that it probably is a mutual trust that has to be established over time around an employee understanding what's expected and the employer recognizing that that employee, in fact, delivers on those expectations.
That's good advice, Dr. Waller. You got to be seen if you want to be remembered. Dr. Cindy Waller, thank you so much for joining us here in St. Louis. We appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.